Welcome back to the Side Chat Podcast. This week we'll be answering your questions that you've been submitting throughout the week. So Cobey and I are here, and we have 20 questions we're going to run through. First question being, during World War II, how many successful American bombing raids were there? Meaning, during the bombers' bombing runs, did the fighters typically keep the bombers safe?
Well, two-part question. I would say every bombing run that the airplane went and came back was successful, regardless of what happened. The second part is the bombers did not have fighter escort until the P-51 showed up on the scene all the way through. The Mustang was the first fighter that could fly with them all the way from England to the target and back. The P-47 and the P-38 can only make it so far.
Talking about 1944 and 1945 here, the biggest threat to these aircraft, the B-17s, Lancasters, B-24s, was the artillery.
Was the flak.
Anti-air fire coming up.
Yeah, by far.
The German fighter pilots who were trying to knock down these bombers were outnumbered and unfortunately outgunned for them, and you're looking at possibly one or two squadrons of fighters facing, at times, 300 to almost 1,000 bombers. The Americans just sent in these B-17s, B-24s in just massive amounts of numbers to overrun the defenses. And even in 1943, the RAF and the American command wanted to believe that they could win the war strictly through bombing Germany, and Germans would just eventually surrender. And of course, that wasn't the case. But the Americans had this pre-notion that the B-17 couldn't be knocked down. If you throw enough of them up there, the Germans won't hurt them. And at first, it was kind of true, and then we lost massive amounts of numbers, which is why you see the upgrades on the B-17G and eventually the P-51 Mustang that did that. Now, we talk a little bit about how the B-17 also changed its combat tactics. Originally, the B-17s wanted to hit the target in a zigzag formation, so they would come in at different angles to try and avoid as much ground fire as possible. But that was less accurate. Eventually, Curtis LeMay told his guys to hit the target straight in, and that's more dangerous to the actual bombers, especially the lead bomber. But that required less bombing runs because they were more accurate. And then you had
much more successful.
Then you want to talk about the B-17 to B-24's greatest protection was that combat box. You want to talk about how that was implemented?
Well, the combat box was designed by Curtis LeMay. It basically put several airplanes in a box formation, and it gave them 360-degree coverage from their own guns. It was very, very, very successful. They could attack anything from any direction with multiple weapons.
So usually those bomber crews were relying on each other for protection. And I even want to say, by the time the P-51, really became present there were so many bombers. The German fighter pilots never had a prayer in 1945. There was just so much coming across that country. There was nothing they could do to stop it. And the P-51, of course, saved lives, but, either way, I don't think the Germans really had a chance at stopping the numbers that were being sent at them.
It was just too far gone by then.
Would you ever think of getting a pilot's license?
No, almost did. I learned a long time ago that flying is a lot more fun when it's for fun and not as a job. And I'm fortunately not a doctor or a lawyer, so there's no way I could go out and buy an airplane. So no.
I just don't know what I would do with one. Like I said, I don't own an airplane. If I ever got a pilot's license, I would rather have a helicopter's pilot's license, which...
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, actually.
But the helicopters are very expensive.
Then you need even more money.
Yeah, helicopters are very expensive machines. Next question. Do you think the Mosquito is too high-tiered in the games as it seems is too slow against the planes of that BR?
I think it's too high-tiered. Yes and no. Yes, and maybe a little bit no. The Mosquito that's in the game is the fighter bomber, the FB version, which is much heavier than the bomber version, like the B Mark 1. The B Mark 1s were very fast. Speed was their number one defense. Having said that, I think that the versions that are in the game now are slow. Yeah, and they should not be as slow as they are.
They also shouldn't be turning
nearly as maneuverable.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Especially the fighter bombers, because the one with the big cannon was a 75mm cannon or whatever the hell it is. It's just you can do all sorts of stuff that you shouldn't be able to just because of the weight.
57mm Mullins cannon.
Excuse me.
Anyway. But yeah, I think when you hear the legend of the Mosquito outrunning everything, that was very early war because, it's all one plane, two engine, and it was facing earlier 109s and earlier 190s. As the war progressed, single-engine fighters got much faster, and the Mosquito got heavier. The two Mosquitoes that are in-game right now are fighter bombers, and a majority of those things' missions were to find out U-boats and destroy shipping and, fighter bomber roles. It wasn't a fighter, per se. It could fight. There are plenty of documented instances where Mosquitoes, attacked other aircraft. But their number one mission was ground attacking with those things.
Yeah.
Next question, what is... Oh, sorry. There was another question to add to that one. Do you hate Wellingtons? Well, no.
No, I love the Wellington.
We actually think that the Wellington is kind of a shameful display in War Thunder just because of the construction that they used in real life isn't really represented well in this game.
It's not at all. Yeah, not at all. It should be much better.
It was one of the stronger bombers ever made. And unfortunately in game they just gonna crumble apart. Next question, what is the best plane ever made in your opinion? We're both gonna probably agree on the same one on this one.
I'd have to say the C-130 Hercules from Lockheed.
C-130 is the longest produced aircraft, at least from the United States.
Yep.
Originally...
Actually, probably in the world now.
I actually don't know.
It's been in continuous production since 1954.
I want to guess that the Russians are probably building something since 1946 still over there.
I know.
What's the thing called the AN-2? How long has that thing been produced?
I don't know if they're still making it or not. I don't know. I don't think so. They might be. Who knows?
But the C-130 does numerous roles. One of the things I always like in aircraft is something that is capable of fulfilling multiple missions. And if you want to run through real quick the list of things that the C-130 does for the U.S. and other countries.
Let's start at the top. The C-130 is a cargo hauler. The AC-130 is a gunship. The EC-130 is electronic warfare. There's a version of it called the Compass Call, which is basically a big giant flying TV station. There's various EC-130s. There's the HC-130, the search and rescue. There's also the HC-130s, the later ones like the Ps, the HC-130P that the Air Force Special Forces people use. The Navy had a version that they used to talk to submarines with. They used to trail a 5-mile antenna behind the airplane, a VLF, very low frequency antenna, to talk to submarines. There's tanker C-130s. There's, you name it. They land in Antarctica on skis. They do all sorts of good stuff.
Really cool aircraft.
Yep.
Next question, are there any games from E3 that sparked your interest? Also, what did you guys think of this year's E3 in general?
For me personally, I don't really follow E3. I don't really follow any of that stuff like that, like Comic-Con and all that stuff like that. I just don't. The only thing that really interesting to me was the Ghost Recon, what's it called, Highlands or something like Wildlands. That looks pretty freaking interesting. It's built on the same engine that Far Cry 4 was built on. So, and then the other one, there's the other Rainbow Six game, Siege. Yeah, Rainbow Six Siege looks pretty interesting too. That's really all that I saw that was worth my time, to be quite honest with you.
You can probably expect to see both of those games added to the channel when they're released. Those are two games that a lot of us here at TBLF are excited to see. I think this year's E3 was much better than the past 2 years. It seems like gaming always goes with a really good year and then an off year, and then a good year and then an off year. For sure, the past year or past 2 years have been off years, and I hope the last quarter of 2015 with Fallout 4, with Rainbow Six Siege, with Star Wars Battlefront, with all these good titles, and then 2016 with games like the next Mass Effect and so on, will be just great for PC gaming and gaming in general. So there's a lot of games, and I also liked how there was a PC gaming conference at the end of E3 this year, and they talked about games like Squad, Rising Storm 2, the Vietnamese version of Rising Storm, or the Vietnam War version of Rising Storm, and so on. So there's a lot of games that have my interest, and I'm glad to see that there's a lot of great stuff. There's so much stuff we could talk about. We can almost do a whole podcast just on this year's E3. The Final Fantasy remake, there's a lot of good stuff coming.
I forgot about the Star Wars game. Hopefully EA doesn't fuck it up. I don't want to have to buy Darth Vader Premium in order to play the damn game, which I'm afraid we're going to have to do.
You don't want your Origin pre-order red lightsaber?
No, I don't. No, sorry.
Next question. Tell Cobey to learn to use the metric system like normal people.
Alright. Here's the deal. I use the metric system every fucking day at work, all day long. Okay? The international standard for aviation is knots for speed, feet for altitude. In World War II, we and the British and the Canadians and everyone else, except for pretty much the Russians, used, and the Germans, of course, used miles an hour and feet for altitude. War Thunder is a Russian game, so they put everything in meters and kilometers per hour.
Russia and China are the only two countries that fly fully in metric.
That's correct, yes.
And so that's why it's a Russian-built game. I understand why the default is metric settings. Unfortunately, like Cobey uses metric system all day. He knows it like the back of his hand. For me, distances are fine in metric and measurements and stuff. I get really messed up when I see like meters a second. It's ridiculous. It's 2015 and we don't have a better system than this. We don't have a universal system. Like I don't know why the American government refuses to switch to metric. We're just so stubborn and we don't want to be with modern times, and it is ridiculous. But unfortunately, it's just the situation that we're all in. Next question: what are your favorite modern jet fighters? Mine's the F-15 for very obvious reasons.
Because America?
America, Strike Eagle.
Mine is probably actually the Gripen from Sweden. It's a pretty good jet. Don't underestimate the Swedes.
What is with you in Sweden?
I just like Sweden. I like it a lot.
Do they like you back?
Probably not.
Cobey loves
Because I'm
Sweden.
not blonde.
Oh. Next question. If you or Cobey were in the military, what would you most likely want to be? Example, pilot, fighter bomber, infantry, specialization, airborne, tanks, navy, etc.
I would probably, that's a good question. I don't like getting shot at because I have a problem with people shooting at me. So probably something where I don't get shot at. Although it would be kind of cool to be a helicopter pilot, I think. I think it'd be a lot of fun to be a helicopter pilot. Maybe if I could find a helicopter pilot job where I can go from, I don't know, something close.
Kansas to Missouri.
Where I don't get shot at.
I think originally when I was 17 or 18, they had the dream of an American young man wanting to be in the airborne and be surrounded by the best and do the best and help your country and all that other stuff. And then today, the older, wiser Bohica let me be like a weather meteorologist, combat meteorologist. Just wake up in the morning at 11 a.m., walk out of my tent, lick my finger, put it in the air. Yep, it's windy. Yep, it looks like it's going to rain. Good luck, boys. Back in the tent and sleep. And then if I'm wrong, I'm a weatherman. I'm always wrong, right? Like, hey, it's the best. It's best for everybody. I don't think you want Cobey and I calling in airstrikes and
Yep,
in charge
very
of
true.
ordnance.
Very true.
Next question: what are your favorite sport teams?
For me, for baseball, the Seattle Mariners. For hockey, the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's really it. I like car racing more than other sports, so I'd probably have to say the Action Express guys are really good. For IMSA, so is the Corvette factory team. Guys, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, just Google them. They're pretty freaking awesome.
I grew up in the Dallas area, and my father actually worked for the Texas Rangers baseball team. So about every weekend, I got to see Nolan Ryan or all those the famous Rangers at that time play, and I followed the Texas Rangers ever since then. Even though they've been bad for about 90% of that. I also went to a lot of Dallas Stars games as a kid, and I saw Mike Modano and Brett Hull play all the time. Fortunately, that team hasn't been too good past those two names. And for American football, my dad always got me into the Kansas City Chiefs, not Dallas Cowboys, but more of a Chiefs fan, even though, once again, that was a pretty awful team. There's been a lot of great moments, but there's not been very many wins. And I actually don't follow much in the like Americans. We just love our own sports. We don't usually follow anything internationally for some reason. Like we're too busy winning our own championships. Next question: can you discuss your thoughts on ultra low graphics quality settings providing or not providing an advantage in tank battles?
I'm gonna have to defer to you in this book because I don't play ground forces enough to even warrant an opinion on it, to be quite honest with you.
I think there is definitely an advantage to turning off your grass and optics and then turning off all the brush and all this grass and stuff so you can see, things much more clear. There's obviously an advantage when you do that. I personally won't do it because I like to see games actually look decently, but I understand some people... That needs to be fair for everybody, right? Like, I understand some people can't run games on higher settings, but at the same point, you shouldn't have this magical advantage of seeing across the map. Now, at that same point, there's times where I scream low user graphic settings SOB, and they might have not been. Sometimes people just see you because you're moving through brush and you have a big tank and your turret's sticking over the top of the brush, and they see that and they shoot there. They're using an educated guess. And so I think maybe 40-50% of the time I scream somebody killed me because of low user settings. It probably wasn't. But then there's been some times where I see people shoot things that only a tow missile could pull off, where it's going like up and down over ridges and hills and past the squirrels, and, past the squirrel's home in a tree, and then hits me, and I'm like, wait, what? And then I look over there, and all I see is a shrub, and I'm like, how can they see me? Then I start to say something's up. When people start making those long distance shots across maps, when I can't see more than 20 yards, or we'll call it 50 meters in front of me, then I start to scratch my head, and it really doesn't help ground forces at all. You need to make it fair for everybody. Make it fair for the guys running embedded graphics. Make it fair for the guys running 980s. Put everybody on the same playing field. That's all I ask for. It should not be that difficult once they realize it's a priority. Next question. Have you guys ever played Company Heroes 1 or 2 or any other RTS games?
Yes. I will say that I always play British because I can pack up my shit and leave.
Cobey's the worst RTS partner ever. Once those
I
Germans breach the barbed wire, he packs everything up, and it's freaking... What's that old song from the 70s where we're going to make a convoy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's gone, just out the door.
I basically spend most of my time building sandbag walls and barbed wire walls and tank traps and stuff like that. And then when the Germans finally come up to me, being British, I can pack up my headquarters in a truck and just leave.
Leaving the Americans to die. That's what Cobey's motto is. For Company Heroes 2, we played it a bit. There was something missing in Company Heroes 2. And I've never been quite able to say what that is. I wouldn't say it's the worst game ever made, but it certainly didn't grab me like Company Heroes 1 did. I don't know if there was...
Yeah, there wasn't enough of a difference between the two. I was expecting a lot more. I mean, it was a little bit prettier, yes. The ice was kind of cool until you got... until you lost all your guys because you got bombarded and the ice broke up and everyone got swept away in the river. But I don't know. It just wasn't enough of a difference for me.
And then once they started putting in Commander DLC and this DLC and this... you look at how many DLCs are available for Company Heroes 2, it really turned me off to it.
Yeah.
That being said, new DLC coming next month, British Forces, and I've added that to my wish list, so I might be picking that up, and then I'll be... I hate DLC, but there's more DLC coming, and it's British, so we might maybe do some live streaming with British Forces if it's any good next month when it releases. As for suggestions for RTS games, Wargame is a very popular one. I played a bit of it. If you're looking for something a little bit harder, there's a learning curve to that one. It's very popular. Men of War is also a very popular one you can look at. Next question. Bo, have you ever thought of coming to Australia? I have. It's on my list of countries to visit. I don't know what I would do in Australia. Probably just look at kangaroos and laugh. I don't know what I would actually do in Australia.
Porky, it's a roo.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I grew up during the time of Crocodile Dundee, and I think most of my information I know about the country of Australia is from the movie Crocodile Dundee. Like, do you guys have water oxes or water bison that...
Water buffalo?
The water buffalo that block your road and you have to get out and communicate with them with your fingers? Yeah. You communicate with didgeridoos. Anyway, like I said, I'd love to actually see the Australian culture and drink some fine Australian beer.
I'd like to go to Australia and I'd like to stay there for a while, but the problem is that you Aussies do not like us Americans very much. It is very hard as an American citizen to get some sort of permanent residency in Australia. It's extremely, extremely hard. And I have a pretty unique job, and my job doesn't even qualify me to be able to immigrate there. Not very fair. Hey, if you want to come to the U.S., by all means, come to the U.S. We'll be happy to have you.
Next question. Hey, Bo, what gaming rig are you running? Cobey and I, for some reason, have always built basically the same gaming rig as long as I can remember. Like, one of us,
it just happens that way.
One of us buys a new computer. We're like, well, I need to build the same computer you built. So I'm running a i7 Haswell 4770. I've had that same processor and motherboard now for 2 years. And I upgraded this year to a 980, which has been an absolute godsend for the channel. That's why you see 60 FPS videos now, and it's really helped me out in time. That's just been awesome. Cobey, though, I think you're running, what, a 4790?
I have a 4790 and a GTX 970 from Gigabyte. We both have the same case, a half 922, which is an awesome case.
Made by Cooler Master.
Yeah, it's a great case. One bit of warning though, if you decide to go with the half 922 and it happens to be next to you at your desk, wear a sweater, because the amount of air that it pushes out is just ungodly, and you will get cold sitting next to it. Seriously. I know it sounds weird, but you will, because I do.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. I'm not complaining.
Hey Bo, what is the best way to increase game FPS and performance on an older video card? Anything would be great. Need help.
Put money in your computer.
Or we can actually try to help him here. First thing I would do is
yeah.
disable shadows. For some reason, shadows are very intense, very heavy, very intense on your video card, and they're not really necessary. They're just kind of a nice feature, but shadows are very hard for your GPU to process. So if you disable those, that'll help it out. Anti-aliasing is another thing. You could drop that down or disable it. Even though your game looks a little crappier, it takes more stress off your video card. And the last thing I'd recommend is lowering your resolution to the point of where it helps but doesn't look like complete crap. And those are the three things I tell you to do. Textures actually do not affect your video card as much as you'd want to believe. It's the shadows and the anti-aliasing are the kind of big two ones that type your GPU's processes. Next question. What are your and Cobey's favorite engines? We'll answer this part first. From the World War II era, radial, V, and inline, and then there's a second question after that one. So what's your favorite World War II aircraft engine?
My favorite radial engine would be the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. Great airplane engine. It's the most produced radial engine ever made. It's in everything. It's in Hellcats, Corsairs, P-47s, a bunch of other stuff. It's just a phenomenal engine. And it was in production for a long time. Still being used today in all sorts of stuff. It's a great engine.
I'd have to agree with him. There's some other notable runners-up, like the Merlins, were great aircraft engines that were used everywhere, including America. We used the Packard Merlins for our P-51s. And then there's some other British designs I really like, but they're way too complex. You look at like the Sabre engine. That thing was just
Napier Sabre.
yeah, that thing was just it was great from a horsepower standpoint, but from a reliability and construction standpoint, it's a very complex machine. And then some of the other Bristol designs were really ingenious, but for 1940s tooling, you know, it was way too advanced for its own good. And then I kind of look at some of the Germans that, you know, they made some really kick-ass engines, but a lot of them didn't have very long service lives. They kept trying to replace 109s with different power plants, you know, so on and yada. You know, there wasn't something that spanned the whole war like some of the like the R2800 or the Merlin did. You know, Merlin was there from day one to the end per se.
Yep.
So, yeah, the next part of that question was, what was the most powerful single-engine, single-seat fighter built during World War II? This is a very loaded question, and we're gonna say. Yeah,
well, powerful meaning what? Powerful meaning the fastest speed, powerful meaning the highest flying, most horsepower, does it carry the heaviest load? Whatever. It just, it's kind of a vague question. Fastest airplane we had was the P-51H. The lightweight Mustang. It was an incredibly fast airplane.
And that beat our P-47M, which is in game now.
Yep.
And then from there, you look at the Germans had the TA-152. That was right up there. It actually flew higher than P-51H, and that was a very fast aircraft. But it also continues on how much fuel the aircraft had, what altitude it was flying, and so on. So, like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like,
speed is relative.
Yeah. And then the British had those late model Spitfires also got up there to be, you know, in that same conversation. There's a lot of pre-production or prototypes or, you know, yada 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 of aircraft reaching insane speeds. You have aircraft like the DO-335, which is a 2-engine that reached, you know, really high speeds and so on. So you just have to go with production, you know, which production models reach that speed, right? This is a conversation you could have for almost an hour if you open up the spectrum to everything. Our short answer is going to probably be a tie between the P-51H and the TA-152 depending on altitude. Next question. What is your opinion on Batman Arkham Knight for PC? I thought that the first Batman was pretty genius, even though it was an okay port. I played the second Batman, it kind of lost my interest, and then this one, I kind of grew tired of how hard they were hyping this new Batman and showing off the Bat constantly videos and advertisements and so on and so on and so on, right? And then they released it for PC, and it was from what I hear, an absolute just terrible port, unplayable for a lot of people, just horrible. Probably one of the worst that has came out to date. And so many people have refunded the game through Steam that they had to pull it from the Steam store, and then it's going to be re-released this November. So I'm glad to see that finally maybe a developer has maybe taken a hint to say, hey, if you're going to put out a bad PC port, it might cost you more money. And hopefully...
Yeah, I don't know why this trend is the last few years of just releasing substandard games. Everyone's chasing the almighty dollar, and it's just gotten out of hand.
Bad PC... I can remember bad PC ports, though, to like 2001, right? Like, bad PC ports have been around, but this is like a AAA title. A lot of people were very excited for this one, and then it just fell flat on its face. And so hopefully maybe some other game distributors and developers maybe saw this and said, hey, let's actually get a port team together that, you know, has a chance at making... The studio that did this didn't have a prayer to do this correctly. And the amount of time and the experience they had wasn't happening. So I'm kind of glad that maybe they learned their lesson, but who knows. Next question. Who does or did the artwork for the outro screen and for the channel? That's my good friend. He goes by the username Kid Galacticus. He's on a few videos here and there. His real name is Wayne Spencer, and he is a comic book artist. He does phenomenal work. I'll put a link to his DeviantArt page. You can check him out, and he has some comic books for sale on the market if you want to, you know, Google for that. I don't know. I'll try to get a link for that as well. But he's a good friend of mine. He's a very nice guy. We met playing Age of Empires 3 ages ago, and just an awesome dude.
Yeah, he's a pretty good guy. He's very nice, and he's extremely, extremely talented. It's just amazing what that guy can do. Pretty phenomenal.
Next question. So, Bo, I heard your opinions on the RP cut, but I wanted Cobey's opinion on the RP cut as well.
I don't think it's very fair. So what happened? The ground forces RP was not raised. The air RP was dropped, correct?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I believe...
Yeah, and I think it should have been just the opposite. I think it should have raised the ground forces RP.
I think that's what we all expected, was that ground forces would be raised to the level that air was, and not probably air brought down. And maybe ground forces was raised a bit. I haven't played enough ground forces to say yes or no. From what I've seen, it doesn't look like it, but...
It's making the game just that much more grindier, and it's already way too grindy as it is. It's getting out of hand.
With a game with 500 to 600 something vehicles, I don't even know what we're at now. You can't expect people to play thousands and thousands of hours to unlock everything, and I don't think that's fair. I think you need to, figure out how many hours does a player need to spend on this game, right, to unlock everything. And I think you need to build your economy around that number, right? Like, should they unlock a tier 5 plane in every 100 hours of play or 10 hours of play or whatever? I think it's ridiculous. Like, if you want to convert RP for like a saber, it's like $40 or $50 in Golden Eagles. That's crazy. Just for one saber, it's like $40 or $50 in Golden Eagles.
Ridiculous.
It is, and I just hope that the economy isn't the thing that brings this game down. And it's, people don't want to play the same. People, I understand, like, that's how a free-to-play game works mechanically wise, but you look at World of Tanks' bad history and bad opinion from when they first started, and then they overcame that. Hopefully War Thunder gets this economy to a point where it's fair for the developer and fair for the player. And right now, I'm going to go on the edge of, and I've always said this, it's not fair for the player.
Yep, I have nothing. I have one jet unlocked, and that's it. One jet. And the reason why is because, part of the reason is because they're introducing so many new airplanes that by the time I get something close to being unlocked,
they put another plane in front of it.
I have to research the airplane that's now in front of it. Yep.
Now, granted, saying we don't, Cobey doesn't play 4, 5, 6 hours a night, but it's just,
No.
It's,
No one should. You shouldn't have to play 8 hours a day to get the game to a point to where you can, play the majority of the airplanes in it.
Alright, and our last question. Do either of you have an ace or military personality who you really admire or respect, and who are they and why?
Two people. First one, General Curtis LeMay from the Army Air Force. I think he's a freaking genius. He had some problems. He was kind of a hard ass, and not a lot of people liked him. But his guys would follow him to the end of the earth, and he was a very, very, very good statistician, and he knew his stuff. Second person would be probably Jimmy Doolittle, because even though he was the general and he was head of the 8th Air Force and so on and so forth, he was still very much a common soldier. He knew his men, and he could relate to them, which is it's hard to do when you're a general.
So let's go back to Curtis LeMay for a minute. He was one of the youngest generals ever, right, for the Army?
I think so, yeah.
He came up very fast due to his radical thinking and so on. And LeMay, you look at it from an American standpoint, and we say, well, he was a great general. Internationally, LeMay is frowned upon. LeMay was very much about protecting the U.S. airmen over the enemy civilian or military population. And you look at the main thing that Americans tend to forget was that LeMay was behind the Tokyo firebombing, right? Which essentially he just dropped one bomb here, and told his guys to fill in the middle with incendiaries. And that killed more civilians than the atomic bomb did. And it's those tough decisions, and eventually that did lead to the end of the war, but those are those tough decisions that, I guess we can all be thankful we don't have to make. Because he replaced, I forgot what his name, he replaced the general that was there at that time, right? Because he was having little effect, correct?
Yeah, I don't remember what the guy's name was. I'm sorry, I don't remember what he was off the top of my head.
But they were doing night bombings with conventional bombs at night and having low accuracy, and then he came in and just sped everything up, trying to end that war. You also got to remember, America was very tired from fighting two war, the Pacific theater and the European theater, and LeMay was trying to end the war. So it's a very controversial subject for that Japanese. But yeah, you look at the rest of LeMay's record, and it's actually quite impressive. For me, there's a lot of World War II aces and personalities that I think are amazing stories. I don't want to pick just one. You look at Bader's story, Douglas Bader, how he, just him overcoming, basically missing both legs and becoming an ace, and just his story and his, the will the man had to keep going. And then you have people like the Finnish guy nicknamed White Death. I can't remember his real name off the top of my head. His story of just resistance is just absolutely insane. You have the women who served as snipers for the Russian army. Their stories are incredible. You have, the Hollywood actor who served in World War II, got the Medal of Honor, Audie Murphy. His story, from beginning to end, is just absolutely incredible. There's OSS personnel that you hear stories from that are just, there's so many great stories from that battle of just human, even from, you look at the German fighter pilots who had to stop the B-17 raids we're talking about. You hear those guys, how, they knew they were losing, but they still fought for their country. It's just amazing the determination people had back then. And I think that's why World War II is so popular today. It's just because of the stories of, the human story behind that war. And so I really don't have a favorite, I would say. Alright, our next podcast will be on the Sky Raider. I'm going to ask for your guys' help. It takes me quite a while to build these podcasts, that's why there have been less of them coming out this year. I'm going to try and speed this up, and what I'm going to do is ask you guys if you have any good Sky Raider replays, go ahead and email them to me at bohicaice@gmail.com. There will be a link below. And I could record that, and then I won't have to play the Sky Raider. I can just do the research, we can do the podcast, and then it'll be your gameplay used for the channel. So that will speed up these, so we get them out hopefully every 2 to 3 weeks versus every month, it seems like. This week was the 2-year anniversary for the channel. I've had a great time. Thanks for everybody who stopped by the live streams. And we also launched our Bowtime Gaming t-shirt store. The link for that will be below, and that has gone off much better than I thought, and I love the support, and I bought some, and I know quite a few of the TBL people have bought some, and it's been kind of fun so far. So if there's any requests or designs you have that you'd like to see added to the store, it's all yours. Like, this is something, for you guys. I think it's just kind of a cool thing, trying to get the community involved with the channel as much as I can, and I hope to do some t-shirt giveaways this Christmas. Last year I gave away games, this year I'd like to give away a handful of t-shirts, so I think that'd be kind of cooler than just some Steam sale games. Got anything else, Cobey?
Nope, I'm good.
Alright.
Stay in school, drink your milk, don't do drugs.
Alright. We'll catch you next time.